I remember coming across it as a phrase after we'd had the diagnosis with Hope, and then it being like, oh, that's what I experienced.
We knew that there would be some kind of grief from what we had expected in the pregnancy, but we didn't know what the shape of it would be, and that would be how I would describe it. We didn't know the shape of our grief.
Then it was also a sense of, I felt that I'd wanted a healthy child, and I felt early on I had to grieve that this wasn't going to be a healthy baby and there were going to be lots of complications.
So Joseph is our second son, and we had a normal pregnancy up until our 13 week scan, and in our scan it took quite a long time for the sonographer to find things, but she didn't seem to say there was anything particularly wrong, and I had the blood tests, not necessarily because I really wanted to know, just because we didn't really think ethically about it, because we had a 2-year-old and didn't really have time. So then I got a phone call we had the scan on the Friday, and that all looked fine, so we told loads of people over the weekend, and then on the Monday afternoon we got a call from the midwife, and I was watching something on TV with Barney, and John came in and said, oh, it's the midwife on the phone. And I was like, that's not good, they shouldn't be calling us. And when I was on the phone with her, she said that the blood results had come back, and that Joseph was very likely to be carrying Edwards. I guess up until that moment, we'd assumed that it was a normal pregnancy, having had one absolutely fine. And so, yeah, that was probably the point where I suppose our anticipatory grief began.
I definitely, in many respects, grieve what the pregnancy would have been like if I hadn't had all of that frightening information and all of the worries about Amelia's health. I felt like I didn't enjoy the pregnancy, and certainly at the start I was not feeling comfortable. I kept trying to, as much as I eventually realized this wasn't possible, I almost tried to not connect with the pregnancy when I was getting these results early on, and I thought that was going to help protect me, before realizing that, I think I said I got to that sort of 20-ish week mark and thought, no, I'm bonding with my baby regardless, and I can't deny that's where I already am. But there was very much a sense of then also thinking, is this going to be the child that I thought I would have, as well as the pregnancy? There's anticipatory grief in terms of like the being like the pregnancy wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I lost that.
And I suppose, unique to your situation now, is anticipatory grief still part of your life now?
I think it is, in a sense, like we were just touching on earlier. There's this sense that there could be something that comes up. Amelia might have some degree of developmental delay or health complications that could crop up at any moment. And it's being realistic that could be the case, and anticipating that and accepting that, because she looks very healthy. She's been, healthy, normal baby and toddler so far. But it's being aware that the expectation, how she appears, that doesn't mean there won't be complications in the future. And I feel like it's constantly keeping an open mind around it, whilst also trying to balance that. You can't always just live your life looking for things to worry about.
Over the course of that week, everything shifted for us, and I think that was, I was 13-14 weeks pregnant at that point, and we still didn't know then. We had no idea what the shape of our story would be, and the shape of our grief, but we knew that there would, to some extent, be some kind of grief, whether that was a child with severe disabilities, or a stillbirth or a miscarriage throughout the process of pregnancy, or a child that lived for a very short amount of time. We didn't know. We knew that there would be some kind of grief from what we had expected in the pregnancy, but we didn't know what the shape of it would be, and that would be how I would describe it. We didn't know the shape of our grief.
So Beth, can you tell us a bit about your story then, please, and how anticipatory grief affected it?
Sure. So we were pregnant with our third child. Didn't have any of the early blood tests, just because I was so sick with morning sickness. I didn't want to leave the house. So it was at the 20-week scan, they noticed the baby was very small. We had the NIPT test, or the safe test, and that came back to say it was 95% chance of having Edwards syndrome, or trisomy 18. And the news was delivered that the baby might not survive. And our first scan after that, the consultant sort of said quite matter-of-factly, the baby's so small, I fully expect the baby to die in the womb or shortly after birth. And I can remember it was almost like my planned future was disintegrating in front of me. I'd dreamed of having 3 children. We wanted 3 children. I really hated being pregnant with morning sickness and pelvic pain. But I was like, I'll endure it to have this 3rd one. And, just all these thoughts of 3 children growing up together, and 3 children playing together, and, having 3 teenagers and then 3 adults. It was just like, there was like one person then missing in all those images. It's like all this future that I'd envisioned just disintegrated in those moments. And I feel like for me, the anticipatory grief was almost focused. There was one particular moment and one particular object. And we've already got 2 children, and we had planned to buy a 7-seater so that we could have 3 isofixers in the back and space for lift, grandparents and stuff. And we'd found one we wanted to buy, and we almost bought it. And I remember thinking, let's just hold off just in case, even though I fully took it for granted that we'd have a healthy pregnancy. And I remember thinking, I am so glad we did not buy that car, because that car would be like a slap in the face every time we got into it. And this car became like this object of, you saw a 7-seater and being like, that's not our story anymore. That's sort of like a big family. That's not going to be us. We're going to be 2 and 2.
I think a lot of us will experience that, right? And I've experienced it. My wife has experienced it too, where, we look at her and we think, what could be if she doesn't have this condition, right? Or what will the future look like for her? Is she going to have all the same experiences as, a typical child or typical adult is going to have? Like, will she fall in love, or, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I do understand that concept. I do. And even, before she was born, is she gonna walk and talk and do all those things and eat and so it is a tough process. It is something tough to deal with, but for us, we just try to take it day by day, and see what she does. And so far she just keeps on surprising us. It's like every step of the way, we're like, is she ever gonna roll over? And then she does.
And then friends of ours, we're part of a family of 3 churches, and friends from a different church came along with their 4-week-old. And I stood a few rows behind them as she sort of put him over her shoulder. And I was just hit by this grief of like, I'm not going to have a newborn. I'm not going to have a newborn. Even though the consultants were like, oh, you can just have another baby. Like, you don't understand. Like, it doesn't work like that. This is the baby that I want. So I think for me, it was it's the loss of the imagined future that we'd thought of what our family was going to look like, and then just those moments where it suddenly hits you, a trigger that just sets it off, and you're just overwhelmed with emotion in a public place that you can't really control or contain, because it's something symbolizes exactly what you're losing.
Yeah, I definitely also had that the kind of trigger when I saw either small babies, so mums with pushchairs, but also especially when I saw siblings, because suddenly we wanted Barney to have a sibling that lived and they could grow up together, and suddenly that was not the future that we had hoped for. And so whenever I saw siblings, I was like, oh golly, that's what he's not going to have. And it's interesting, even now I see siblings close in age, and I think, oh golly, that's something that we've lost for Barney. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Play parks for a long time were not a safe place.
What about the lead up to like anniversaries and things like that? Because I know a lot of the time when we talk with people, they say that actually it's the lead up to an anniversary or a significant event that is harder than the actual event itself. And
yeah, I think we've just had Joseph's first birthday, and I think the weeks running up to it, I was really aware of where we were heading. And the actual day in some ways was a day, and we made it through the day and got to the end of it, and we're quite pleased with ourselves that we'd made it through. But I also think though that for me the anniversary provided a space to be active in my grief, where the rest of the year it's almost harder to find those tangible outlets. So like we've had daffodils in our house for weeks, and every time I'm doing the daffodils I think about Joseph, and I sent sunflower seeds to all my family so that we could all plant sunflower seeds, and writing the cards and doing those very active things was really helpful for my grief. I wonder if there's also something about the like community's anticipatory grief. As the mum, you have this anticipatory grief, but you also have the day-to-day of the pregnancy and managing your body, and although you're not in control of the pregnancy and the growth of the baby, you are the closest to having some control over that in a way, or maybe not control, but I guess you're the closest to the baby, and so you have that sense of being with the baby. But I wonder also at the people who are more removed, as you kind of get like concentric circles of community, how anticipatory grief affects those like concentric circles of people, and how they I don't know, but I imagine it has ripples, I'm sure.
I definitely found I had to manage. I didn't know it was so tiring to deliver bad news. I'd never experienced that before. And so sort of having to pace myself with who we told and how we told people, that face to face people would get upset, or you were then dealing with their emotions and how to navigate that. Another thing that occurred to me was sleep and how it affects your sleep. What I found after the diagnosis, I mean, you're also pregnant, so that affects your sleep, but it was like, especially with kids at home being busy all day, sleep was the only time to then really process and think about things, and lost a lot of sleep because of that anticipatory grief and wondering what was going to happen, and but still trying to appreciate the fact the baby was still alive in the womb. So like, she's still alive today, and that's good. Never knowing, will it be tomorrow, will it be a week, will it be a month? And
so our hospital's very small. It's like it's a big hospital, but it's a county hospital rather than a city hospital. And we've got quite a lot of friends that work in hospital, and we had some that were in peds while we were there. And one of the things I found quite profound, and not totally straightforward, but also really right, was that Joseph was like aiding medical knowledge. And so because lots of Edward's babies aren't carried to term, and so we had like trainee obstetrician doing a scan. I know that the neonate team, the pediatric team, had a whole day on Edwards, and they used us as a case study for that. And we also went up to Bristol for a heart scan, because our obstetrician in Taunton wanted to be a heart specialist, and so wanted to get a heart specialist to check what she thought she'd seen with Joseph's heart. And some of that was quite hard, but also the whole time I felt like this little life is actually giving back, and he's helping to educate the next generation of doctors to do this better. And I think that was both very profound, but also not totally straightforward. And a real privilege as well. But eventually I was induced at 35 weeks, and Joseph died in the course of childbirth. He was alive probably about 30 minutes before I gave birth, but then didn't have any. He wasn't made for this this world.
And our story ended up being quite different in that Hope was born healthy and well, and we think it was all just in the placenta, called confined placental mosaicism. So, and she was very small, she was under 4 pounds. So we had a very prolonged newborn period because she was small for so long. So we did end up we did buy the 7-seater in the end.